let me start with a couple of questions. You were both quite young when these events happened, but what memories of these events perhaps made their way into the film or influenced any aspect of the film?
Well, hello, thanks for being here. Well, yes, I was 12 years old when all this happened, and what I do remember is that every time that the campaign was on air, it was like when the national team is playing the World Cup. So it's nobody in the street, everybody was just looking at the campaign on TV with this national tension somehow. And I also remember that the Yes campaign was very rude, was very aggressive, and very silly at the same time. And I do remember how fresh and different and somehow strange at the same time was the No campaign. But beside that, I was just 12. I was probably worried about my bike or stuff like that, you know. But yeah, it's just a sensation. It's a combination of emotions that I think, you remember the kid, Gael's character's son, well, with Antonia's son. I think I'm a little bit like him somehow. I was on the Atari and I was just looking at the world through this kid's eyes, and I recognize myself in that little character.
Antonia?
Yeah, but in a way, when you grow up in a dictatorship, no one don't care. Now you see in my country, and I think everywhere, a lot of people don't care about politics. They say, no, it's the same, everything is the same, or I don't care, I don't vote. But I remember I was 8 years old, and I know I was the no side. And my school companion was, yes, and we were fighting. You are a communist, he said, 8 years old, And you are a fascist, and communist, fascist, like you are like fighting for a ball. Like everyone was like crossed by this dictatorship. And I remember when the referendum was, I was 16, and I was on the street. I went to that manifestation.
Demonstration.
Yeah, in the street where my character was caught. I was on the street running from cops. And it was the first really big one, because it was the first time you have the opposite side has permission to get together in the street. So for some amount of time, we have permission to be there. And then the cops arrive and we start running and everything like always, But I was in the street that day.
Can you talk about the transition in the screenplay? It started off a play by Antonio Scarmeta, which I don't know, how different is it? How much did you take from the original play for the screenplay?
Well, Antonio's play is a very short play that's never been staged. It has the essence of the movie, I think, because what is there is, it has the idea, which is fiction absolutely, that these both characters work together and in the same agency, which is actually something that didn't happen. So we grabbed that and we began a very long and strong investigation that it lasted over 4 years. And then we had a very long script and we shot all of it, and we had a first cut of over 4.5 hours. It's very, very long, and then it was very hard to deliver it in nearly 2 hours.
What kinds of things were in that longer cut?
Well, we have all the relationship that Gael's character, Antoine's character, with the fight with the son. And then we have something that is very interesting, but it was very hard to put in the movie, which is the fight that they had inside the No Commando. That we have it now, just a little bit, but that was way more developed, because it actually happened that they were divided in two groups. One of them would say, let's show what's really going on in this country. Let's expose Pinochet and the things that he had done. And the other side, the other group, was these guys who were represented by Gael, who said, forget about it, let's show something positive. And so that was way more developed. And then we have a lot of footage, heaps of footage. But we were very lucky to have interesting opinions, because this movie is made with help and the work from France and from the United States participant. So they help us in the editing in a very powerful way. So we could make it a more, let's say, universal film thanks to those eyes.
And finally, can you talk about the decision to shoot the film as you did on U-matic? What kind of problems did it cause in terms of everything from lighting to performance to whatever?
Well, every time that I see a movie that it has a footage, you can tell easily the actors and what's the fiction, and then what's the archival footage. And it breaks the illusion for me, and it would always constantly tell you what are you looking at. And so we wanted to avoid that. Mm-hmm. And we made a test. We tried almost 7 different formats, from Super 35 until the U-matic format that you just saw. And we really wanted to use something that it was just exactly the same format from our footage, so people wouldn't really know what is what. So you create that illusion. The movie has almost a 30% of footage, and it's something that we didn't shoot. And it's funny because sometimes most people think that we shot everything. It's not like that. And I think that's because of that. And the problem was it's obsolete, the format is obsolete, so we had to look around most of the United States to find we hired a company in Hollywood. They bought 20 cameras, and they assembled 4 with those 20 cameras, and they sent it to us, and they would last like a week, and they were like persons, they would just get tired, and they get hot, and they get cold, and it's a whole thing, and there's no technician, there's no technology. You cannot send it to be fixed anywhere, because nobody does that anymore. So it was
going from the camera onto a U-matic tape, or
no? It's a camera. The camera that we used is a camera. It's a tube camera. So it has 3 tubes inside from each main color, and it creates this image throughout a heat. That's the technology. That's why when it has a very light highlight, it feel like a ghost in the image. And we record that digitally, but it was very low. The iPhones that you guys have here have more resolution that these cameras had. So it was a whole sort of challenge, and we were worried on how it looked on the big screen. And we tested, and we found that it looked quite horrible, as it does. But you get used to it, and I think just like the guys from the campaign who had the no option, we were able to bring something beautiful out of something ugly.
Was it any kind of special burden for the actors?
Yes, it was quite different, because in this obsession of Pablo to mix reality with fiction that he was doing between footage and what we were filming, the same happened in performing. Everything has to be so real. So we start getting confused. A lot of people got very confused when we were doing the manifestations on the street or everything. People start getting crazy, but real crazy. The first time we did twice, and the first time it was like a complete descontrol.
Yeah, we had extras hitting the policemen, and the policemen were extras too. It was like, hey, what are you hitting?
Yeah, a police guy was taking me, but he was my guardian. He was contratado para eso.
He was contracted to do that.
To take care of me. But some people came to liberate me. And I didn't want to get, I was like this with this cup, please don't let me go, don't let me go. And some people came running, like really crazy people. That year when we did this movie,
we had somebody hitting Gael's
because
cup, He was hitting the cup. No, he's an actor. Don't do it, please.
But that year was a special year in our country, because it was the first really strong year of the students in the street, when everybody got to the street. And not only the students, also Hydro-Aysén in the south, like what they want to do with the rivers of the south. We went up to the street, like the street was really hot last year. So the extras were like people that live in that area of Santiago. They got crazy like this, like a switch, and they got really, really crazy. And I think you can feel that because you can tell the difference not only because of the image. I think some of the spirit of what started happening because of this director's obsession start breathing in the performing, in what was happening inside the fiction too.
Yeah, no, when I was in Santiago last summer, the streets were packed. Yeah. All the time.
2 questions. I thought it was fascinating that you chose not to have anybody play Pinochet, and I wanted you to talk about that decision and that all the footage that we see of Pinochet is all actual footage. And also, when you saw the movie made with based on this old technology, was it strange to see, because you never grew up with that, or maybe you did when you were a kid, but to see it actually, what it would have looked like in the old days, it must be interesting for the actors to have seen themselves in that weird, older format.
Well, it's strange because Pinochet usually, you don't get to see Pinochet very often on TV for a lot of reasons, and because probably nobody wants to see him anymore. And then we found this, and it was so special, especially in the very last one when he said, "Oh, I'm sorry if I did anything wrong. I know it's not that bad, and please forgive me. I'm a good person, whatever." And what happens and this is so interesting because, time changed perspective of things, and so Pinochet now it could be funny, it could be absurd, and it could be meaningless or weird or odd or a lot of things, but not that dangerous. It looks like an old man sitting, saying weird things, but he was actually very dangerous. And what is interesting is that the reaction in young people in my country when they see Pinochet, most of them would just laugh because they would look at him as a very distant person, maybe a guy coming out of a comic book, like a villain, which is something that is not dangerous. For us and for older generations, is very intimidating. So the reactions in front of Pinochet's figures is every time very different. And I think that's very interesting. And throughout your own experience, you will see Pinochet in a different way. But I'm glad that you realized that he's actually Pinochet, because some people think that we shot him, that we had an actor playing Pinochet, and he's not. It's impossible. And,
were any of the actors playing real historical figures? I mean, with the same names?
The problem that we had in the research, that we realized that there were a lot of people involved, there hundreds of people. So you cannot you need Robert Altman to do that, and you cannot make it. I can't make a movie with 30 characters. And so what we did is we designed sort of icons that would represent 3, 4, 5 people. Gael's character represents 2, but Luis Ñeco, the politician, represents 5 persons. Then the film director, another 5, Marcial, another 5. So there were a lot of people, and we had to create sort of symbols in order to be able to do it. But you see, you remember on the credits, we had the real guys with the actors, and they were, all of them, they played different little characters in the film, but in the other side. So the guys who did the no campaign in the movie are creating the yes campaign, and the guys who, and it's like a game that we all played because it was very important for us to have them with us and to count with them, because otherwise this would be something so distant from reality, and we wanted to somehow to avoid that.
I think I will insist a little bit on the same point, because the point with this movie is reality. And to see myself is not that important. Like to see that what is happening there seems to be truth, and that was very nice for me to say, wow, that looks like it's true. It's like even though it's me, it doesn't matter. I don't care about me, but it's true. And it was very interesting what happened in my country with this movie, because it's not that not so long ago. We're all alive. We felt like we were not like babies in that time. They're all alive. So everything was like. A lot of people got very angry because politicians were not that strong in this movie. So, yeah, but it's fiction. But no, it's not fiction, because if you put that too much footage, you start mixing with documentary, and no, politicians are very bad represented, because we politicians were so much stronger. And those things start happening because of that sense of truth, So, it was very interesting in that way, I think, and moved a lot of kind of scarves that we have just because of our transition to the democracy, and how do we behave as a country in these 24 years, because we still have the constitution of Pinochet. So we have a very kind of weird democracy. So this referendum was like how we start building a new reality, and it has very beautiful things, very epic things, because we put the dictator away, but also we start dealing with the mafia, with the criminal, and that today we still are cosechando, how to say? Harvesting kind of that movement of the little thin red line of principles and ethic,
Okay, let's see. Right here in the middle, if we can.
Hi. So, the historical relationship in the movie is fantastic to watch, but the growth of Gail's character as an activist, within the movie is kind of, to me, one of the strongest things I take away from it. So I'm wondering, in your 4.5 hours of footage that you started with, when did you start paring it down and finding his central character and have him drive the story?
Well, I think Gael's in almost every scene. Just a few of the Yes campaign is not in them. So the entire movie is throughout his eyes somehow. So he was always there. What we finally chose to do was to avoid the internal discussion on the no campaign. So we will just be talking about, in my opinion, about how the advertising communication would have this crossover with the political communication, which is something that I think is very delicate, because that's how you start to realize that words mean less every day, less and less and less. Because when you have somebody who's selling you, I don't know, a washing machine, a refrigerator, and it says that it will change your life, you don't care. You say, all right, this guy is selling me whatever. But when you have a politician in a campaign and say, I will change your life, so what does that mean? So he's dealing with a country, he's dealing with something big, and you don't care either. So somehow what happened to us, I think, is that when we had that crossover and someone from advertising came into the political communication, they were brilliant and very smart to create something that finally put away Pinochet, which is something that we needed. But at the same time, we sealed a pact with the system, with the logic. And if you think about what's going on in my country today, it's very good in a few things. We have freedom of speech. You can make these movies or the movie you want to do. You can say whatever you want. You can do whatever you want. But my country is owned by 6 guys today. And my country has, it's complicated, because if you want good education, you have to pay a lot of money. So if you want good health, you have to pay a lot of money. Everything, it's on money. The state is getting smaller, and companies are getting bigger. And I think somehow all those things began here at this point. That's why I think it's so important to stay in the advertising side instead of the sort of internal conflict that the No campaign might have had, and so that's why we stayed in that track, and that's why what Antonia was just telling, we had a very interesting sort of national discussion with the film. The film was released early August, so a couple of months ago, and the reactions were amazing because everybody had a different opinion. It's like with the referendum, everybody has a different opinion. So it was very interesting to be able to explore those elements that are so important in our contemporary country.
The scenes on the skateboard that you put in are very important for the mood, I felt, and I was wondering about the music, your choices, the music that you play while he's on the skateboard twice. I think you use that 4 times in the film. Could you speak about that choice and the waltzes?
We actually we were going to use way more of those valses, but a friend of us, a producer that's right here, sitting right there, is called Jonathan King, said that we shouldn't have the valses while the dialogues were on. And I could not believe it. And I was like, come on. And he convinced me, and I think he was right. And we just kept them where they are now. Valses are, an aristocratic dance and so we had this sort of sensation that comes from something that is smooth, and it's a very slow dance, that it could create some sort of a reflection moment, I thought. And combined with somebody, riding a skateboard, I thought it would just feel something in a moment that the character would be maybe thinking of something, maybe floating in the city somehow. And it's also something important for me because it's very 80s, and well, the skateboard is something important until today, but I don't know. Back to the Future was important for me. I cannot deny it. And the skateboard idea is something that. And then I asked Gael, "What do you think about this?" And he was a skateboard champion when he was like 17. And he said, "I'm not going to do any, jumps and tough, weird things, but I could ride it on the street." And we started shooting. It was quite dangerous because if he fell down, he could break a bone. You have to stop the shooting. So we don't have a double for that, and it's him. It's not easy to have a Gael Garcia's double, So he did it, and I really like it. It just feels like it's only an emotional idea. It's not an intellectual idea for anything. It's just riding around the city, and then in the first scene you don't see any cars, or just a few of them, and in the last one there's a lot of people and cars outside. So something changed. It's not very exposed, but I think it's exposed enough.
Okay, this gentleman who's standing up here.
Oh, thank you. It was a fantastic film. I was thinking about it in relation to the documentary The Battle of Chile, the Guzman film, which I think you have some footage from. And this, in many ways, is a sort of sequel to that. And if the Guzman film ends very tragically, this seems to end happily, but as you say, it's sort of a bittersweet victory. And So I wanted to ask you both about whether you thought about that film at all, and what exactly, you mentioned in this longer cut, what was the sort of reaction to the old school leftists when they won? Did they sort of join the cause at the end, or did they, I mean, historically, I guess, and in the longer cut?
Could you say it again? The reaction from the people from the
Well,
left?
there's this scene where that one guy sort of leaves and says this is a joke, and I just wonder what people like that felt as the campaign went on, because in this cut it seems like they kind of eventually overcame their disagreements. But
Yeah. First, I think the Battle of Chile is it's not only a masterpiece, but it's also something that is very, very important for our culture. And we did use a few fragments, but just very short takes. We needed to show that other sort of point of view, which is actually what it did happen when at the beginning of the No campaign, what the very first idea was to attack Pinochet and to show all the footage that you've seen. So then they changed it. I don't know what would happen if they keep in the same way. But what I do know is that the real left people didn't support, just like Antonia's character. They thought that if you would vote in that referendum, you would be saying, okay, so Pinochet is a legal figure, and it's not. You will say, okay, this is something that is right, and I will say no, But what happened is that most of those guys near the referendum, the votation day, the election day, they finally went to vote and vote no. I mean, because at some point, when they realized throughout the polls that it was possible to win, they said, most of them, not all of them, but most of them, okay, forget about it, just let's go and just pull him out, whatever it is, whatever it costs. I mean, no matter what the reasons are, we need to pull him out, and they finally did it.
But for this character, when I asked Pablo, okay, what do you want me to do? How can I preparate this character? He told me, find people that think like that thought like that in those days, and talk to them, because maybe it will be better. You will have better argues than what is written, So I said, oh, good idea. So I went researching people, and it was not difficult to find them. I talked to 5 persons that didn't vote, that were against the plebiscito, the referendum, because they really think, and in those times, they were like the boring guy of the party, We were all together. We were going to have happiness for us finally and everything. They were selling like a very beautiful common sense. Anyway, it's like selling. It's strong, but anyway, it was a common sense, and it was very healthy for my country to feel that beautiful common sense together. So this really left-wing people was like, oh, you are the boring guy of this party. But to defend them today is very interesting, because anyway, we were all so happy, but selling some things that, or ignoring some things that were really important. So we were saying, oh yes, what are the rules, Mr. Pinochet? Okay, you will be a senator for the rest of your life. Okay, we want you out of the government. We don't care if you are a senator. We don't care if we can't catch you, because he has everything arranged to be like, he died free and millionaire, and that's the big scar of my country. Our dictator died free and millionaire, and that's because how things were done. So I think something was beautiful, and they said, we will arrange everything later, and later never came. So today is very interesting to put that over the table,
Hi, thank you. In a way, this represents a trilogy with Tony Manero and Postmortem that goes from the, people being walled up at the end of Tony Manero to a sort of liberation at the end of this film. Does that represent an evolution in Chilean thinking?
I don't know. I made those 3 movies, but I didn't know that I was going to make 3 movies out of the subject. So it's not something somehow rational. I just approached to each one of them because it just felt right at that moment. I still don't think that these movies want to change anything, or these movies want to be nothing but a reflection from a couple of Chilean artists, and we were lucky this time to have people from the United States and from France supporting and working on the movie too, because we were able to learn out of them. And so I just think that there's something in common in the 3 movies, that all of these 3 characters, they somehow, no matter what they say or do, but they think, I think so, that reality is something that is not going to affect them. And they are finally very affected without them to notice. And I think that's something very contemporary. In a lot of countries, a lot of people don't want to be close to the political issues of the country, and because they think nothing is going to change and nothing's going to affect them, and without them to notice, it does affect them. And when you don't know that, that affection could be dangerous, I think. And that's the only thing that I think they have in common. But yeah, that's pretty much.
Okay, I'm afraid that's all we have time for. I want to thank
Thank you.
Pablo
Thanks for coming.
Alessandro so much for being here. And thank you as well.